Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Gareth, and this is going to be a follow-up video on my previous one on the stages of awakening. In the last video, I covered what it is to live in ignorance. Then I covered witnessing consciousness, and then I covered the first shift into what's known as cosmic consciousness or self-realization. So there is a unfoldment of consciousness that takes place, and I am going to talk about what happens after self-realization. So there's been a shift, a shift in consciousness or through your perceptions, usually. There's always exceptions. Everybody's awakening is slightly different because everybody's mind, body, nervous system is different, and consciousness is awakening through that individual differently. Every individual has its own unique unfolding of consciousness, or consciousness unfolds uniquely through each individual because we're all different, right? And no two awakenings are the same. Um, I mean, a lot of teachers that I've come across, they talk about, their experience, and if your experience doesn't match their experience, then, maybe you didn't have a full awakening or yeah. So look, that's not my experience. My experience is working, over the last 5 years, I have worked one-on-one um, with a lot of people going through spiritual awakenings. And I have noticed that everybody's unfoldment is different, right? Some people experience big, flashy shifts in consciousness. Some people, it's more of a gradual unfolding. But they all look different, right? There's certain characteristics along the journey, like signposts that happen. Um, yeah, and it's a way for us to communicate uh, about these shifts. So, in the last video, I spoke about the shift that takes place when awareness, right, that is witnessing, looking in on us, eventually makes the shift to turn around and become aware of itself through our form. And that happen when it happens, it's a permanent shift. Now, sometimes it can happen, and the nervous system might not be it might not be developed enough to maintain that shift in awareness. And what you can have is a sort of I got it, I lost it, it's there. It's kind of like it's misfiring a little bit, maybe. And this happened to me early on. I got, after my awakening, I had the realization for about 5 days. And then I woke up one morning and it was gone. The contractedness had come back. Um, it was really confusing to me. I went out for a walk, got it back a little bit, maybe for an hour or two, disappeared. Next day, same thing, came back, disappeared, and then after the following day, it just came back on. And I kind of feel, or what I kind of felt was, it was just a way of just showing me the contrast. It's like, oh, okay, this has been your shift. Now let's take it away and let's bring you back into that contractedness, identifying with the body, mind, ego. So there was a definite um getting to know that state. And I'm going to talk about that as well, right? So the first shift in consciousness can happen for most people. It happens in an instant, right? There's a some sort of recognition. It's like kind of one of the analogies that I kind of try and explain it with is if you've ever been stood in, say, your kitchen, and it's getting dark outside, right? And you can see you're looking at the, say you're just stood at the kitchen, you're doing the dishes, and you can see out through the window, right? It's getting dark. Um, and then all of a sudden you turn the light on in the kitchen, and all of a sudden you can see nothing but your own reflection, right? It's kind of like that, right? It's always been there, but it's like something just switches where your eyes make an adjustment and you see something that you didn't, it's always been there, but you just didn't see it until you adjusted your vision or your eyes, and then you can't not see it, or the other way around, right? You you've got the light on in the kitchen, you're doing the dishes, you can just see your own reflection, and then all of a sudden you can see something moving in the garden, and then you lose the vision of yourself, and all you can see is the garden. Kind of like that. So the shifts can happen in a flash, right? There can be a little spark or a click or something can just trigger the recognition of awareness awake to itself within. So it happens in an instant, right? But then there is an unfoldment of that state. Some people recall it refining perception, refinement of perception of that shift. So it's like an unpacking or an unboxing of the shift that's just taken place, right? And what that really means is you're just getting to know it, right? It happened. It awakens. It kind of feels like, oh, there's something new has happened. Something has opened up through me. And it has, right? Its awareness has become aware of itself at the center of your human. And what that feels like is the human is still here, but at the center is, other people call it fundamental well-being, unbounded awareness. Um, there's lots of different names, right, for the one truth that's at the center of what we are. So as I went through my shift, I noticed that my mind wanted to understand what had taken place. And I think when we bring the intellect into understanding the shift, that's when we start to refine the perception of the actual shift, right? It's like understanding it, listening to other teachers. So one of the a really beautiful, um, really simple was Pointers by Nisargadatta Maharaj. It was beautiful. It's on YouTube somewhere. If I can find it, I'll link down below. And it was Nisargadatta Maharaj's pointers to what that ultimate reality was. And he would just say them in different ways, lots and lots and lots, hundreds of different statements he had made throughout the years about consciousness and awakening. And I would listen while I was driving to work every day, going in, listening to the pointers. And you're not listening with your intellect. It's it's that place, like the words he was speaking is actually the truth of what that is. And when he's speaking it, he's pointing to that place. And there's a place in you that's the same place he's pointing to. And somehow through the words and through your kind of piecing together, it's like, you know, and it just starts to click into place more and more and more. And I mean, I would listen to hours. I would drive to work for an hour on the way in and an hour back, and I would listen to it. And I would listen to other teachers. One of my favorite teachers was Adi Ashanti, and just listen to how he would talk about the different shifts in consciousness. And that was refining my perception. Like I'll give another kind of analogy is like if you've ever seen somebody sanding down, a beautiful piece of a worktop, They'll use different sandpapers, different coarse sandpapers to get different finishes, you know. And I found that like the finer the sandpaper, the smoother the surface would become, you know. And then all of a sudden, yeah, it's like, you know, gleaming, really, really. And this is what refining them perceptions are. So you're taking your time to unbox the shift. It happens. It happens through awareness, and then the perceptions change, and then we have to have an intellectual understanding of what happened to refine the perceptions. So it's maybe it's talking about it with somebody, or maybe it's listening to somebody talking about it, or they say it in different ways that maybe you hadn't looked at before. So it's like you're exploring all the ebbs and the flows, yeah, and meditating as well, right? So you're sitting in it, you're noticing things that you didn't notice before, little qualities, subtleties, you know, oh yeah, oh, I didn't notice that, or I'm going to sit in this part of it for a while. So that's the refinement of the perceptions. And that's really, really important for the next stage of awakening that seems to come on. Now, the next stage of awakening is sometimes referred to as God consciousness. And it doesn't mean that you become God or God wakes up in you. It's just a simple recognition of the awareness that is aware of itself within you. It knows what it is. And in the next phase, it's like a portal or an aperture of a camera starts to open up periodically, right? So it opens up, and what is awake to itself within you starts to look out through your eyes, and it starts to see itself in the surroundings. So for me, this would always happen when I would go for a walk. So I would, you know, get up. So let me just come back a one step, right? So in this next phase, your baseline is always self-realization. So the first shift that happened, that is it's like your new firmware on your phone that's been uploaded, right? That's what you're working off, right? That's your bedrock. That's boom, the new shift, and that's now where you're operating from. Self-realization. You are the self, and all the next shifts happen, but they happen from that level of the self. So when the self starts to look out through your eyes, it starts to see itself in the world. It knows itself as unbounded awareness, and now it starts to put its attention outwards. It's like I know that when I look inwards, I am nothing, and now I'm turning back around. So I've span around first. I've become aware of myself as awareness. It has become aware of itself as awareness. And now it's turned back around and starts to look out. Oh, okay. If I'm unbounded awareness that was never born and I never die, what am I looking at outside? So now there is a recognition, and it's not a permanent shift, this, right? It's like something is opening up and something is closing down. It might come on for like, you know, an hour. This is how it used to be for me. It would open up for an hour usually when I went out, right? Something used to trigger it when I would walk outside. Um, and again, very, very important part of the unfoldment of this was being in nature, right? Actually going for walks every day and looking at nature, looking how the sun comes through the trees, the dew on the leaves, on the flower, how the light would, you know, hit them. And I started to kind of go, oh, okay. So what's inside of me is also on the outside. And it's almost like the awareness that awakens inside and and knows itself, has the recognition of itself, turns, looks out through your eyes, and it's seeing the world for the first time. So it's not like you, the individual, you've walked that walk 100 times, right? Same walk you do every day. You walk along, blah 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 blah. But now all of a sudden, it's like something else is looking out of your eyes, and it's seeing that everything it looks at is itself. Somehow, it doesn't understand it, but it knows that it's what's outside. So for me, it would happen in nature, or if I was driving to work, I would start, looking in the rain. I would see dogs running through fields and stuff like that. And I would say, I'm the dog, or I'm the wind moving the trees. And it's very emotional. It's like something opens up in the heart. You start to feel a lot of love. It's like, oh, you love everything. Everything looks beautiful. Insects, animals, other people. For some reason, you start to see beyond the ego in people, and you just, I remember walking down a busy street one day and seeing a beggar, and knowing that beggar was me. That beggar was on the floor. There was no difference between me and the beggar, and having compassion for people. Understanding that, oh, I am all of them. Um, so this phase for me, so I'm just gonna come back to how my awakening unfolded. So I didn't really have any teacher, or I wasn't part of any group. I didn't really even watch YouTube videos. I had bought a couple of, Adi Ashanti's um audio books and was listening to him, and the Nisargadatta Maharaj um pointers. But I was allowing it. It was like a very natural process to me. I was just meditating each day, going for my walks. I wasn't doing transmissions at this stage. There was just a very natural unfoldment of consciousness happening. And I had about 2 years of this, baseline self-realization, moving into God consciousness, coming out of God consciousness. And again, the God consciousness phase only opens up periodically, closes down. And I used to get it for about an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, go for a walk, come back in, and for some reason it would close down. And I don't know why it would close down. I got it one day where I had it for a full day, and it actually became overpowering. I was like, oh God, this is getting a bit much now. Like there was a lot of bliss, a lot of like love. So maybe there is a reason, maybe that the nervous system isn't ready to hold that state. So this is what's known as God consciousness. Um, Another thing that I noticed, that when perceiving nature, it almost seems like there is a golden hue around everything. Everything just kind of has a new look to it. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but how I would feel when walking. I used to have this sense, this kind of sense that I had been teleported. I was an alien to this planet, and I had been put here, and everything was been experienced for the very first time. So every footstep that I took was new, right? Every time my foot came down on the earth, it was the first step ever. Everything that I was witnessing was for the very first time. It was like a new planet to me. Um, yeah. So again, not a permanent state. It was an opening up and a closing down. Sometimes it's also accompanied by a Kundalini awakening. Um, and a Kundalini awakening, a lot of people, they hear the word Kundalini and they think that it can be hectic, or it can be overpowering, or it can turn out disastrous for people. Usually when you're going through an awakening, it's just a very spontaneous, beautiful experience that starts to unfold. It's part of this cosmic dance that's unfolding. Do not fear it. It's just something that happens. It's bringing, and I spoke about that in one of my videos where I talk about awakening through the body. I will put a link to that at the end of this video. So in the next video, I am going to talk about the shift into unity consciousness. Um, so just for a little, just another little disclaimer. A lot of these shifts, they seem like they're in stages. It's like you're kind of walking up steps to get to somewhere. Kind of is for the sake of talking about it, but I also want people to know that some of these shifts, they're not linear. Some people can have shifts or glimpses into the later stages, like unity consciousness can be opening up, or, some people might actually even bypass the God consciousness phase. I know quite a few people who've bypassed the God consciousness phase and it comes back in the later stages. So don't worry if it's not showing up for you early on, it might show up later on in unity consciousness. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.